All right, let's sit down and talk about Durin, because the leaks around him just got some big updates. And honestly, I think it's time we break everything down properly. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through what we know so far, what's recently been clarified, how the community is reacting, and ultimately where that leaves us in figuring out Durin's actual place in Genshin Impact. Save up to 25% on the current banners at lootbar.gg, especially for the Nod Cry release. Loot Bar is offering the all-in-one pack and the 6,480 pack for only $69 compared to $100 in-game. That's a $31 saving. I just entered my UID and selected my server. In less than 5 minutes, the gems appeared in my account. As you can see, I received double the amount for my first purchase, just like with in-game top-ups. And remember, the double bonus for your first purchase has been reset in 6.0. Beyond Genshin, you can also top up in Honkai Star Rail. Loot Bar has over 100,000 satisfied users and also supports PS5 and Xbox top-ups. New users can get an extra 10% discount, while returning users get 5%. The link is in the description. So first things first, Durin isn't just any random character name floating around. Lore-wise, this guy is a huge deal. We're talking about the dragon who clashed with Dvalin, someone directly tied to Kenria experiments, and now he's being teased as a potential playable unit. Naturally, that alone has expectations through the roof. The earliest leaks painted Durin as a Pyro support, specifically described as a kind of Pyro enabler with utility baked into his kit. If you need a comparison, think of him as an off-field Pyro applier, but with team-wide utility, kind of like if you blended Bennett's team support with Zhangling's Guoba presence. A strong mix, right? But here's where things got spicy. The first leaks mentioned a synergy tied to the so-called Hexenzir characters. Supposedly, if you slot Durin alongside one or two of these Hexenzir members, his kit unlocks an additional effect that lowers enemy resistances. And not just pyro resistance, but multiple elements. That's when the skepticism really began. The way the leaks were phrased, people thought Durin could apply pyro, trigger reactions, and shred not just pyro resistance, but the other elements' resistance too. So for example, if you caused a pyro-cryo reaction, he'd shred both pyro and cryo res. And the numbers being thrown around? A 30% shred across multiple elements. Let me be blunt, that would have been insane. Way stronger than what Kazuha or Zhongli currently provide. So naturally, players started questioning whether it was real, a mistranslation, or just plain fake. Others weren't just concerned about power level, they hated the idea of faction-locked buffs. They compared it to mechanics from other Hoyoverse games like Honkai, Star Rail's Harmony, or Zenless Zone Zero's faction bonuses, where your team feels punished if you're not running specific groups. And honestly, that criticism made sense. Nobody wants to feel like their favorite unit is weaker just because they're not in the right clique. Now, here's where the updates come in. We've got new translations and clarifications that clear up some of that confusion. First big reveal, Durin's elemental skill actually provides healing. This was completely missing from earlier leaks, and it's a huge deal. We don't know the scaling yet, but the fact that he brings sustain means he isn't just a reaction enabler. He can actively keep your team alive, which is a rare trait for Pyro units. Suddenly, Durin's role broadens from Pyrobot to a genuine hybrid support. Second clarification, the resistance shred is not as busted as people feared. It turns out Durin doesn't lower pyro resistance at all. Instead, when you've got Hexenzir characters in the party, his kit reduces only the other element's resistance during reactions. So let's say pyro reacts with cryo. Only cryo res goes down, by either 15% or 30%, depending on how many Hexenzir members you have. Same thing if you're triggering hydro or electro. Pyro res stays completely untouched. And that completely shifts his design. Instead of being a universal pyro buff machine who would skyrocket units like Diluc or Hu Tao, Durin becomes more of a reaction partner booster. His real job is amplifying the other side of the reaction, helping units like Ayaka or Nuvalette hit harder, not necessarily making pyro DPS the stars of the show. So, does this fix the community's concerns? Well, kind of, but not really. On the one hand, it prevents him from being absurdly overpowered. Imagine if he could shred both pyro and hydro res at the same time. He'd instantly be a must-pull and arguably power creep staples like Bennett. This correction reins him in and keeps him from breaking the meta. On the other hand, the requirement for Hexenzir synergy is still there, and that's what players are really upset about. To get the most out of his kit, you have to bring specific characters. And right now, the supposed list includes Durin himself, Albedo, Mona, Klee, and even Venti. Lore-wise, that lineup feels kind of random. People are pointing out that it doesn't even make total sense, and it feels like gameplay is being bent just to fit some vague Hexenzir theme. Naturally, Reddit and Discord have been full of memes. You've probably seen the jokes calling it racism impact, as in, Durin only buffs his friends. And others worry it's a deliberate setup for Alice or Nicole to sell future banners. Here's the thing though, locking his full potential behind specific teammates is both a blessing and a curse. On the positive side, it stops him from becoming a universal support that overshadows everyone else. On the negative, it creates that awkward gated feeling where you're punished for not owning or liking certain characters. And this isn't the first time we've seen something like this. In Honkai, Star Rail, characters like Silver Wolf or Seal have mechanics tied to party setup that sparked debate. In Genshin itself, Shenhei is amazing for cryo, but outside of cryo teams, she loses a lot of value. So while it's not brand new territory, it always stirs controversy when it shows up. But here's something worth noting. Even if Durin is your only Hexenzir member, you still get a 15% shred. That's not nothing. It's not max potential, but it's also not useless. It means you can still slot him into reaction comps without going all in on the theme and still see value. So what does this mean for his role compared to existing supports? Well, let's look at it point by point. Off-field Pyro application. Great for enabling reactions. Healing through his skill. Huge, since Pyro units rarely bring sustain. Reaction-focused resistance shred. Makes him ideal for boosting cryo or hydro carries. That's a pretty unique package. No other Pyro character really checks all those boxes. Bennett is still the gold standard for ATK buffs, Xiangling is incredible off-field damage, and Toma brings shields. But none of them combine sustain with reaction amplification, like Durin potentially does. The main drawback, of course, is the synergy lock. And depending on how clunky or restrictive that feels in practice, it could make or break his popularity. And let's be real here, leaks are not final. We've seen this play out so many times before. Kokomi was literally memed into the ground as useless when she was first revealed, and now she's one of the most reliable supports in the game. Raiden's numbers were adjusted right before release. Even Nahida got reworked before launch. So yeah, these leaks give us direction, but not a guaranteed destination. If his healing scales well and his reaction shred works smoothly with top-tier carries like Ayaka, Ganyu, or Nuvolette, Durin could easily become a sleeper powerhouse. But if the restrictions feel forced or his numbers don't justify the setup, he might end up more niche, one of those units you only see in very specific comps. So, where do we stand? Durin looks like a hybrid Pyro support who brings off-field application, healing, and reaction-based resistance shred. That's a fresh and exciting combination. But his kit being tied to Hexenzir synergy has left a lot of the community frustrated, worried, and even cracking jokes. My personal take? It's too early to panic. Leaks change, numbers shift, and Hoyoverse has adjusted kits many times before release. If you like his design or his lore significance, he could be worth pulling. If you're worried about synergy restrictions, maybe wait and see how he plays in practice before committing your primo gems. But what about you? Do you think the Hexenzir lock adds cool flavor to his design? Or does it just feel like unnecessary gating? And is healing enough to make you pick him over supports like Bennett, Zhongli, or Kokomi? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm really curious how people are feeling about this direction. That's going to wrap it up for today's breakdown of Durin's latest leaks. If you enjoyed this and want to stay up to date on future Genshin leaks and analysis, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Save up to 25% on current banners at lootbar.gg, links in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.